Collision repair isn't just fixing cars. You've got auto body repair shops and you've got commercial truck shops, and sometimes you have shops that do both. If you've ever considered expanding into commercial trucks, or trucks is your entire focus, this episode will give you a clear picture of what's actually different and what you need to tighten up to win more of that work. Dean Hancock is one of the sharpest estimators I've ever met in the heavy-duty side. That's why we wanted him to join our team here at the Hero Group to help support HD truck shop owners. This is an estimating episode, but for HD trucks. We get into the nuances between truck and auto collision, how to get your estimators writing better, more defensible estimates, and how to close more of the jobs that cross your desk. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Welcome to my podcast, Operational Intelligence. I'm Tom Zoblin. I spent 15 years running a marketing agency in the collision industry. I sold it, and now I build AI tools at the Hero Group to help shops run better. My favorite part of my agency was never discussing marketing, but it was spending time with the shop owners on the phone and on the shop floor, learning what they were dialed in on and what they tried and what they failed and what finally worked. The world does not need another collision podcast full of generic industry talk, so I'm doing this one my way. It's all about owners teaching owners, one episode, one topic, and one operational lesson that you can take back to your shop and use. And seriously, what is it with all these marketing people turned podcast hosts anyway? So Dean, thanks for being on the podcast. I've known you for 3 years now. We met the first time at the HD Truck Repair Forum. And I know that you owned a shop. I know you own a commercial truck shop. And this episode is going to focus a lot on the commercial truck side. But I actually don't know how you got into the commercial truck business versus like auto body, or what's your origin story?
It's funny. It was pure accident, actually. I had taken auto body in high school and got out into the field and worked my way up to be a painter for a dealership. And one of the local jobbers decided that they wanted to hire me to go out and sell. I knew nothing about sales. They put me on a truck and said, "Hey, we'll see you Friday," and gave me a general area to go to. And I had previously in the late 80s went to work at a truck shop, and we
Okay.
did Zen trucks. But and I can remember that conversation with him whenever the amount of work really fell off. He was like, "God, I hate to have to let you go here at Christmas," and all of that. And I remember talking to him and saying, "You know what? I am too short to be painting cab over roofs." And I really want to go back to cars. And I did, and he was good, and we remained friends over the years. And um, I went down the path of into sales for a local jobber, and spent 9 years with Sherwin-Williams as a fleet direct rep and a jobber rep, all bundled into one. And oddly enough, he became one of my customers.
Okay.
And I was sitting in his office one day, and he said, "I really want to retire in the next year or two. I really want to retire." And I said, "Well, what's your exit strategy?" And he says, "I don't have one. I don't have anybody here that I feel like can take over the business and knows the front end and the back end." And I've been helping them some with their numbers and setting up processes. And he said, "I'd like for you to do it." And that kind of led into the conversation of what it looked like and the time frame. And I left Sherwin and ran the shop for 2 years to make sure that's what I wanted to do. And in the 2 years, I fought him out.
Wow.
Our primary focus was heavy duty trucks, even though we did do some cars.
So how long did you own the shop for after that?
Owned it for 15 years.
Only 15. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you sold it, and that's kind of rare in the commercial truck world right now. Like in the auto body side, everyone's selling, to consolidators and stuff. But you actually did sell it to a consolidator, right? You sold it to a chain shop, right?
Yes. Yes. I was, so when I owned the shop, um, I went to my paint supplier and said, "Hey, I'd like to have a 20 group for trucks." And so since it was my idea, I got to pick the facilitator, and we ended up having a really good group. And the HD repair forum had started, and I was teaching estimating classes for that paint company, and I was doing a class at the HD repair forum, and a gentleman with Gerber just happened to be sitting in the audience, and he come up to me after the class and said, "Hey, you ever thought about selling?" And jokingly, I said, "Man, every day." Well, he wasn't. That Monday, he called me and said, "Hey, I wasn't playing. I want to buy the shop." And that took about a year, and
Yeah.
uh, and we finalized the purchase. And I spent worked out my contract with them, and decided to come home after that.
Yeah. So, does Gerber own a lot of commercial truck shops, or were they just dabbling in it at the time?
Uh, so they had bought through some acquisitions. They acquired some truck shops.
Okay.
Um, if I'm not mistaken, I was the first one they just bought outright without being part of an acquisition. But there was 9 that was in the same group that I was in, and I think there was a couple more. So they probably had about 12 truck shops all together.
So you were seriously looking at, I mean, I know you said you did it jokingly, but there must have been a part of you that was looking to exit at that point.
Yeah, it's always in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
You think, well, my boys did not want any part of the shop, so you start thinking, what's my exit strategy going to be? How well, who am I going to leave this to one day? And it was just good timing.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing kind of happened with me with my marketing agency. I was, you get these calls all the time. Like anytime you own a business that's doing pretty well, you get reach outs from people, and some are serious and some are not. And I'd actually had an offer 2 or 3 years before I sold it that, it would have made us a bigger agency. It would have been a roll up like a Gerber where I would have been part of this new company, and that didn't fall. That fell through. And then, but then it really kind of planted the seed in my mind about, my exit strategy. So yeah, and it does. It is kind of always in the back of your mind, sort of gnawing at you. Like, if the right thing comes along, maybe there's something's telling you that this is what you should do next. So, and then I had all the software stuff that I was working on too. So it just made the timing was right for me also.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So for this episode, what we want to discuss, because there's two things that you're kind of known for, I think, in the commercial truck world. One is your SOPs, and you actually have a company that handles SOPs for the commercial truck world. But we want to talk about estimating because you've been teaching estimating long before you even sold your shop. And I think estimating, this may be a pretty interesting episode even to auto body shop owners who are looking to expand maybe into commercial truck. I always tell shop owners that they are making a mistake by not considering commercial truck because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. You know, when the auto body side has dips and valleys, commercial trucks are out there with not a lot. There's not a ton of commercial truck shops out there. You don't have near the competition. And if you understand how to fix cars, it's safe to say you could fix a truck, right? A commercial truck. Is it all that different, really? And jumping from one to the other?
I don't think so. We did trucks and cars in the shop, and I don't think a lot of the guys that ended up working on the truck started out on cars.
Yeah, yeah. So are they afraid of them just because they're so big and unfamiliar? You think that's why people kind of shy away from it?
I think so. I think that, just the sheer size of them and having to climb ladders,
Yeah.
they tend to be, back offish a little bit, say, this is not for me.
I've been in 4 commercial truck shops now, two big chain ones, and then 2 independent shop owners. And it's such a stark contrast to an auto body shop. Like, for example, you walk into an auto body repair shop and there's a space for parts. Everything that's come off a vehicle is in a rack or in a bin or in a trailer outside or something. It's organized and it's out somewhere. You go in a commercial truck shop and the parts are just laying right there, right next to the truck. It just comes off and it just lays right there. So that's like the first thing that you kind of notice. You see all these trucks and you're like, well, where's your part department? And they're like, "What do you what part department? They're just right here." The
Yeah.
and, the other thing is how long they sit there. Like a truck stays there a while and they're not like you go to an auto body shop, if you stay in the office and you come out like 3 times a day, there's most of the cars have changed. But you can come out to a commercial truck shop for an entire week and everything's exactly where it was the day you first came out there. So that's kind of an interesting thing too, is that they occupy a lot of space and they don't move around a lot. You're not jumping between vehicles. How long does it take on average for you to fix a commercial truck versus a car? What's the average cycle time on a commercial truck?
Now, I've seen everything from 15 to 20 days in some cases, depending on, the severity of the wreck, of course. But, it's such a different world. There's
Yeah.
good and bad to both sides of doing trucks versus cars.
So, and part of that too is the estimating process, right? So, like, you can walk us through here, but like just getting parts, when you craft an estimate, that's probably, is it safe to say that there's more time spent on building the estimate even than there's almost as much cycle time in the estimating process as there is in the repair, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. Years ago, the trucks were not included on the Right to Repair Act. So they don't
Okay.
have to share that information as far as OEM position statements or parts pricing. So, it all begins too with the truck. A lot of trucks, most trucks are custom ordered. It's not
Okay.
like a car where you buy an F-150 and it's got this package or that package. These trucks could have just tons and tons of different um, layouts on the inside. They might have wet tanks. They might have drop axles. There's just a ton of stuff. So a lot of times that information is not in the software because it is a custom order.
Uh-huh.
And then, you get into it and there is no parts pricing. You have to call and get quotes. So it depends on what kind of relationship you got with your vendors of how quick you get a parts quote back. Sometimes you might wait 3 to 5 days just to get a quote back.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, a lot of the trucks are self-insured. So you got to go to the truck to look at them. It's
Hmm.
not like the car where we get a DRP directing the cars to you or the people are driving it to you.
Right. And that could be pretty far away, right? Like you said, sometimes 3 to 4 hours one
Yeah.
direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Depending on how big area you're willing to cover.
So from phone call to the truck is in the shop ready to be repaired, including looking at the truck, writing the estimate, getting the parts quote, all that stuff, and then getting it approved. How long are we talking there? Is that over a week?
It could be more. It could be a week. It could be more, depending on is this truck an over the road driver? Is he going to California from East Coast to West Coast, and he's going to bring it in when he comes back in? Or can I get a rental truck?
Right. So like he's driving around with it damaged. You mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess that's true. You kind of assume that you're getting them when they're not drivable or not considered safe. But if it's just, is it, I guess, cosmetic damage? I mean, if the cab's mangled, I mean, what usually happens on a commercial truck what are some of the typical repairs that happen on them?
we did a lot of hood repairs.
Hoods.
It seems like, and there are shops out there that do swing hoods. They'll provide you with a swing hood so you can keep rolling, which I
So,
think is a great idea.
so explain what that is.
So they'll have a hood for that particular model already ready to set onto the truck. And they put their name and phone number all over the hood. And then they repair or have the hood ready to go when the truck comes back in and they just swap the hood out.
So maybe a different color and stuff like that, but it has
Yeah.
like the truck
Yeah.
shops. I don't think I've ever seen that on the road. Like a swapped out hood, but I'll have to pay attention to that next time. See if now I'll probably start spotting them everywhere, but I didn't realize
Right.
that. Yeah. I did marketing for Garmat and they do a lot with commercial truck and they do a lot with Volvo and the Volvo I forget what it is, but Volvo they have a division that if a part in their production line gets dropped, but it's not damaged, but maybe the paint's damaged or whatever, they recycle them. And the hoods was another one of those where, because it's just such a big unit moving around the factory, they may get chipped or scratched or whatever. And so they'll put it back through and then they'll sell that part as a not a OEM part, but they had another term for it. Not like opt OEM on the auto body side, but it was kind of like that concept. So, that whole idea of just having these hoods just kind of sitting there is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and you think some of those hoods are almost as big as some of these small electric cars.
Yeah. 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 Because and that's the other thing too that surprised me about trucks is how you repair them. So, there's what, 4 bolts that hold the cab to the frame or something like that?
It
Or
just depends
6?
on what's in there, how big the sleeper is.
But it's not many, right?
No,
It's
it's not too many.
and a lot of times on these repairs, you're actually pulling the whole engine and drivetrain out of it, right?
Well, it depends. Sometimes, we did very little pulling engine and, transmissions out. If we
S
could push the frame with it in, we would. If we couldn't, then, you know, engine transmission had to come out.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of truck at the truck shops I've been to where just the whole cab's just sitting there. The rest of the truck's sitting out in the lot or whatever, but just the cab's there,
Yeah, we
which would
tried to paint as many parts off as we could.
yeah.
And, we tried to also schedule to where the same color hit the paint shop at the same time,
Mhm.
especially with hoods.
Yeah.
It didn't take long to figure out I can get 6 hoods in 1 booth.
So, are you painting to order, or do you have, like, a whole mix station, like, where you can mix any color on the fly? Because it
Yeah,
seems like when I was at a Premier location, there was actually a truck in there that they couldn't paint because they didn't have the paint yet. It was on back order or something, which I thought was kinda weird because most shops just mix the color right there.
right.
But is that not
And
how it
you
works in truck?
Yeah, same thing, and unless they had a toner, or a I know, some of those trucks have a glass flake in them.
Okay.
Maybe you've got something like that or a mica that's on back order.
Okay. Maybe that's what it was. Okay. Alright, so with the estimating, um on the commercial truck side, because you're teaching these classes, what are some of the things that you experience with most um, truck shop estimators? Because you're not just teaching young guys like fresh into the field. You're having classes with people that have been in this business a long time. What are some of the things that you think the commercial truck shop world just seems to kind of miss, and why do you think that is?
I think the biggest thing they miss is OE requirements for the repairs.
Yeah.
We I can remember a few years ago before I started doing the advanced class, one of the things in the fundamentals classes we talked about was seat belts. And, I always say the truck world's at least 10, 15 years behind the car world.
Hmm.
And nobody's putting on their estimates to inspect seat belts or replace seat belts. And
And
the majority of the OEMs say that you have to at least inspect it. Folks like Freightliner says you have to replace it when it's involved in an accident. So there's a lot of things that these folks are not putting on their estimates. Um, I think I did a class for one group that said if they just got point 0.5 for what they are supposed to be charging for, it would add $4 million to their income.
just 0.5 of labor hours, just of body labor, just somewhere in the estimate.
Right,
And that's easily missed because if they're not even putting stuff like safety inspections. And that's all driven because this weird thing with commercial truck where you can't access the OEM procedures. They don't like we're on the auto body side, they want you to have access to it. You have to pay, but they want you to be able to get in there and see it. But with the commercial truck side, that's not the case, right?
right.
And so you had told me a story that where unless you sell that particular model, you can't like you could be a Freightliner dealer, but if you don't sell that certain model, you can't even get access to it, right? Is that what you were saying? Something like that?
Yeah, so they usually to have those position statements, you got to be a dealer or somebody like a Penske just to have access to them.
Because
But
of the volume Penske's doing?
right, and the dealers.
Yeah, because they own dealerships. Yeah. Okay.
But
And so
I find that most people miss way more than point 0.5 on estimates because we do a lot of exercises
yeah.
in the class and they're based upon OEM position statements. And by the time they finish either fundamentals or advanced, they were like, wow, I didn't even realize that the doors don't come with corrosion protection and I got to put cavity wax in them.
So how did you become this expert in truck repair estimating? Was it because of your automotive background and you kinda understood what went into it, or
Yeah. that and, I always looked at it like, I'm already here, so what else can I charge for on my estimate that I need to do anyway? So I started researching everything, and then I started getting my hands on, OE position statements, and I just started collecting them. And, over time, you start adding those things, and, it's not a lot of insurance companies involved. There are some, but most trucking companies are self-insured. So you got to educate the customer why you're putting this on the estimate. For an example is Volvo requires that you do a destructive weld test. Well, a lot of
Mhm.
people's going to push back on you and say, "Why are you charging me for this?" Well, Volvo says that it is required, and
So
I show the position statement.
so does that usually win the argument? Do they keep pushing back, like, on the insurance side on like, the auto collision side right now, it's nothing but pushback, that's why we have this whole reclaimer
Yep.
product coming out. But you're having somebody that's self-pay, but it's not their personal vehicle, so are they more apt to pay those things even though your estimate may be higher, but because you're able to prove that this vehicle needs this thing, that they don't really argue with that?
I get a lot of less pushback from the fleets out there. Of course, the insurance companies at first want to push back because it's something new they've never seen before.
Mhm.
So when you show them the documentation, they're like, okay, okay. If the OEM says that you have to do it, that's fine. I'll pay it.
So which is not what I'm hearing on the auto body side, but that's why we built this product to help fight that. But some shops are saying no, they just don't want to pay it, and they can say they don't want to pay it, and they're not going to pay it, and that's the end of it. But I also talk to shops all the time that they're like, no, that's not how it is at all. If we can document it, we can get paid on it most of the time.
Right.
I think there's one insurance company that starts with an S that everybody points to and says that they just do not pay, period, and that's the end of it. But that's just one insurance company out of a whole lot of them. But do you have that too on the truck side, or is it just because they're so unfamiliar with trucks that they don't have really the skill set to deny things like they do on auto body side?
So I approach it a little differently. The first thing I ask when I get pushed back is it required to put it back to pre-accident condition? And if the
Mhm,
answer is yes, then I'm gonna go to the next question. Is it included in another operation? Then, and if the answer is no, then we're gonna move to the next one. And then the third one question I ask, is there a predetermined time? And if the answer is yes, then we're done.
mhm,
If the answer is no, then the next question I'm gonna ask is, what do you think it's worth?
mhm.
Now we can negotiate what it is worth without, you know, the last thing you want is somebody coming in a shop and you go, "Oh my God, here comes Rob," or he says the same about you. So I go through those 4 questions, and if we can get through those 4 questions and negotiate at the end, then nobody's mad.
And that's with the insurance company, or that's with the fleet owner as well?
We've done it with both.
Yeah. So they you do sometimes get pushback then from the fleet, what is it on the other end? Fleet manager? What's that position called?
Yeah, probably a lot of most time it's a fleet manager.
Okay. And he's responsible for, like, a geographical thing, or is he the whole fleet all across the country?
Yeah, it's usually a geographical thing, and typically those guys are more familiar with the mechanical side than the collision side.
Yeah. So when you submit an estimate to get a truck repaired, are you one of multiple people? Is it because I know on the municipal side, you have to bid and it's the low bidder, but what about on the fleet side? Is that fleet manager calling 5 shops and saying, "Hey, I need you to estimate this for me," or are they just kinda you land that account and then you just keep getting all the work?
I think it's a little of both, because you have different scenarios. I know, like you said, with municipalities, it is, and the government, it's going to be a bid.
Mhm,
So some of these fleet companies have trucks that are theirs, and then they
mhm,
have maintenance contracts
mhm.
as well. So if you're doing one of their trucks, more than likely you're just writing the estimate. They can say yes, we're going to approve it, or we're going to send it to our body shop. If it's a maintenance contract, then they may get two estimates.
Okay. So, eh, I would imagine then your estimates are higher because they're more thorough, you
In
know?
some cases, yeah.
And so, do you get pushback on those, or do
I th
they because they're more thorough, you actually get the business?
Yeah, I think they realize that, "Hey, this guy didn't put a cooling pack on it, or he missed this, or he missed that, or she missed this, or she missed that." And they
Mhm.
realize that, well, if he's gonna be that thorough on his estimate, um, they're gonna be that thorough on the repairs.
Yeah, and we're probably not gonna get hit with surprise bills,
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Yeah,
you
I try to tell them too. I mean, that's 80,000 pounds in most cases going down the road. That's gonna take out a lot more people than just the driver of that truck. It could be
yeah,
your wife and kids on the road with that truck.
yeah. And how long ago was it that you sold your shop?
Almost 5 years.
So, was ADAS I know ADAS is starting to come out into the truck world. Did you have a lot of ADAS
We
to
did
deal with?
not. We
Yeah,
did not. I had to go through, Bendix Brake School, and learn all the ADAS stuff, what's included, what's not included, what calibrations need to be done. That way I can speak correctly in these classes on what's involved with ADAS.
so the commercial trucks now are getting auto brake, right? Where they'll if somebody is stopped in front of them, it'll try to, stop the truck, is what I heard. But also you have blind spot monitoring now. What are some of the other ADAS technologies coming to the
So you got
commercial
forward
truck?
facing cameras,
Okay.
and you got the lane deterrence, like we talked about. You got the
Yeah.
foot radar, adaptive cruise control in some cases.
Are those components more expensive than car ones, or is it about the same?
I would say they're probably a little more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's
And
dealing
we're starting to see, airbags and Freightliners and Volvos. So,
Wait, they don't have airbags in them? I didn't realize that.
yeah, the new Freightliners have airbags and the Volvos have airbags.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I figured every on the road vehicle had airbags in it. But I guess too, when you hit something with an 18 wheeler, it's probably happening down below. You're probably not getting that brunt like you do up front on a regular car. I guess where it hits maybe makes a difference in that.
Right. And you get a lot more rollovers with trucks. So, um, I know in the new models with Freightliners, they're putting in a side curtain airbag
Hmm.
that comes out right behind the driver's door.
So is
And
that going to total more trucks out? Do you think?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I mean, because you think about how much those trucks are worth.
yeah, yeah. Because you
They
can practically rebuild the thing and it still won't total.
Right.
Yeah.
They've gotten, IMMI makes 95% of the seat belts in Class 8 trucks. They also have a seat, um, that locks down whenever the truck is going to roll over to keep the driver from hitting his head on the ceiling, and has an airbag in the side of the seat that deploys so he don't hit his head on the glass.
Oh wow.
And, the downside to this is if you're working on this truck and you're R&I in the seat for some reason, and you don't disconnect the power to it, that seat is going to deploy and latch down in the bottom. And you better not have your fingers in the way because you're going to be missing some digits.
And with no OEM procedures, how do you know what the process is?
Right.
Now, does the equipment does it come with its own OEM procedures? Like, do the seats themselves come with something so you at least know that much, or is that
So,
hidden too?
yeah. So IMMI, they can get all that information for free from their website.
Okay, but do these guys know how to do that? They know to check the procedures for
Yeah.
that stuff? No, yeah.
Even the ADOS stuff is free from Bendix.
Mhm.
You can go on their website, get all the position statements, what's included, what's not included. It's all on there, but nobody bothers to go and see.
Yeah. You think that's gonna be probably the biggest challenge in the truck side is just getting this to become a habit for
Yes.
people?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, which is why we're gonna try to include it in our stuff so that it's just there. But
Yeah.
if even then, I mean, will we get them to look at it? That's yet to be determined, I guess, but it'll at least call it out that you have these processes that you need to consider and put in the estimate.
Yeah. Because, you think about a lot of these shops that are doing heavy duty trucks are doing the high rise vans,
Mhm,
whether it's Ford, GM, or the Sprinters.
mhm.
And nobody's pulling up those OEM procedures of where you can splice stuff in, how many spot welds you need. Is it boron steel? Is it high strength steel? They're not looking at any of that and giving it to the technician.
Yeah, that's scary. That is scary because, we all know how important that stuff is. So they could be welding things that shouldn't be welded and just kinda making it up how they see fit. Yeah.
Right.
And those vehicles all do have ADAS on them too.
Yeah. And that stuff is available through the OEM websites.
Yeah, and they're not checking that stuff at all.
No,
Even on calibration on ADAS calibrations?
no. I've actually
So
had somebody in my class say, "Oh, we just bolted on, sent it down the road." No, no, you don't.
God,
There's
that is
calibrations
terrifying.
that have to be done. Dynamic and static calibrations have to be done on ADAS.
Yeah, that is terrifying because those vehicles are constantly being in and out of body shops, like, the Sprinter vans and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a client that, was an RV repair specialist, and he was looking for ways to expand the business, and I told him that he should get into sprinters. And so we created this whole sprinter website for him, and, years later, that's his main bread and butter now is just the sprinter vans. They outpaced the growth on those outpaced his growth on his RV repair shop, and he had 3 locations.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, yeah, that was probably one of the best tips I ever gave to a shop because it radically changed his business, and I was just suggesting, "Hey, here's an area that you should consider," and, they're in Dallas, and that's what he does the most now is sprinter vans. So, at the time, he had a high roof booth because he had RV,
Mhm.
nobody had high roof, booths, they couldn't paint stuff, and so he was able to kinda get in early and become, the go-to place for sprinter vans, so, but and I know they are pulling procedures because he came from the automotive world, so I know those vehicles are getting repaired properly, so at least that's good to know. Um, so, back to estimating, one of kind of the mission of the show is to kind of educate shop owners about, um, kind of like what works and what doesn't work. So, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges, like for an estimator, if they wanted to, if you owned a shop and you wanted to get better at estimating, like where do you start with that? What are some of the things that you need to kind of start doing, and then how do you get your estimators up to speed?
Yeah, so, a lot of times those trucks will come in and you have no idea what was on them. Did it have fog lights? Did it not have fog lights? So getting a breakdown from the dealer to say, "Hey, what came on this truck?" Because you need to put it on the estimate. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of estimators make is they'll go take pictures of the damaged side, but they don't take pictures of the undamaged side for them to go back and look at what is supposed to be there.
Hmm. So they're having a guess then,
Yeah,
and then that's another call. And then how long does it take to get that information then from the dealer?
yeah. Another side is getting them to use the P pages.
Hmm.
There's a lot of good information in those P pages, what's included, what's not included.
So how did you get your estimators? Like, what was your process to get those guys estimating like you did?
So
Or
we
did you just do all the estimating?
No, no, I ended up having some estimators, but, we went through a whole training process of, first trying to get them used to, um, what is the truck? What is the model of the truck? What pictures do I need? What information do I need from the truck? Because you get a box truck, you may need the cab information, the box information, and the lift gate information. And then taking good photos.
Hmm.
That is big. One of the things I tell everybody now is do a video as you walk around the truck and speak to the camera and say what the damage is and what you're thinking at the time so you can go back and watch the video again. That
Hmm.
really helps a lot.
Hmm. Yeah. What other tips do you have for estimating? I know, because I think I was in one of your estimating classes, and you'd mentioned, just being able, so one of the things that happens with commercial trucks that people don't think about too is that people live in them. So there's personal belongings in there.
Right.
And then, taking the vehicle when you do roll the truck out of the shop, you know, tarping it and stuff like that, like, it seems to me like the commercial truck world doesn't even think to charge for like trying to determine what's the cost of doing business seems like that might be a challenge to realize that you can charge for that. So what are some other, pitfalls that you see estimators not charge for?
Well, I think when I tell these folks, I tell them, I said, start with the front. Most estimating softwares start from the front and work to the back, and they go from outside to inside. So stay with that one section until you have everything, and then move to the next section and the next section and the next section. Because my analogy of that is if you opened up all the drawers on a toolbox, what would happen? It'd
Mhm.
fall over.
Yeah.
So let's stay with one section until we're completely done, and then let's move to the next section. And as you go through the estimating software, if you go take that route, then as you go through, you'll say, I didn't even realize that this had a separate bracket.
Mhm.
Now I can add it to the estimate.
Mhm. So front to back, one thing at a time. So you see a lot of estimators that are just kind of just grabbing stuff? Is that how they normally do it?
Jump all over the place.
I wonder why that is.
I think it's inexperience, not knowing what they're doing. Um, I know with some softwares, you can just kind of jump around
Mhm.
in there. Well, you can with any of them. A lot of them will align it for you in the category it's supposed to be, and then there's some that will not. So if you would go from the front bumper to the front seat, back to the radiator, to the rear back, to the rear mud flap, back to the door. Well, that's really hard to follow.
And it's just whatever comes to their mind, like, "Oh, I think it needs I know it needs this,
Yeah,
I know it needs that." They just kind of start hitting the things that they know it needs and then work their way into what it might also need.
right.
Yeah,
And
I
I
could
tell everybody too, when you're looking at hoods and you're going to repair the hoods, break the repair into two repairs, an outside versus an inside.
Mhm,
'Cause I had so much pushback from everybody, whether it was fleet or whether it was insurance companies, "Well, how do you get 8 hours out of that?" "Well, I got 5 to fix the outside, and I'm gonna need 3 to fix the inside, but I'm also gonna need to paint the inside because I can't leave that raw SMC material for the weather. I've gotta put something over it."
and is that stuff in P pages or that just comes from experience?
Yeah, we just started doing that whenever, it was getting so much pushback from these insurance companies. "I don't see 8 hours." Well, flip the hood over and you'll see the rest of the hours. So I just break it down to, repairing the fender, and then I put right underneath it, repair the inner structure, fender left, and then put the time and some paint time on it.
Mhm. So that's another thing that's kind of, it's I think kind of unique to commercial truck is that there's a lot of repair instead of replace. And so that when it's repair versus replace, is there a lot of book time about the time to repair, or is it kind of like a judgment call? Like
It's
how
a
long you
judgment call.
yeah. So is that I would imagine that's probably where a lot of the pushback comes back from.
Yeah, and I think the other place that you see a lot of pushback is shop supplies.
Mhm.
I see this a lot, and it comes up a lot in conversation. Um, so I tell everybody try to line item as much as they possibly can. All your glues, your caulkings. If you're doing box trucks, line item all your rivets. Maybe you create kits. It says a corner cap kit, a nose radius kit, a corner radius kit, so that you don't get so much pushback and you spend so much time on the phone with these people saying, "Hey, I'm not paying $500-600 for shop supplies. Lower your shop supplies and line item." And one of the bigger benefits for that is you can job cost against it for one,
Mhm.
and you could pull those parts and take to the technician so they're not walking up and down the shop coming to get rivets all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Um so as far as estimating, so these are some of the things that you see estimators miss all the time. What are some of the things that you've tried on estimates that just don't work? Like just well, like you mentioned, like giant shop supply line items. But is there anything else like that just doesn't work if you do it this way and you need to do it a different way?
Well, the shop supplies for sure is
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
You know, um, Trying to elevate your paint materials to cover, you're gonna need some kind of proof.
hmm,
Because like I said before, some of these trucks are coming with mica, and they're coming with tricoats, they're coming with glass in them. So, if you just put a dollar amount out there without documentation, um, they're not gonna pay it.
hmm,
They're gonna push back. I tell everybody, put line notes. Explain your repair to the person that's gonna be looking at the estimate.
hmm. Okay. Trying to see what other. questions I have here to go over. So this is one that I like to talk about with shop owners. On the auto body side, it seems like there was life before COVID, life after COVID. Like COVID just fundamentally changed the collision repair business on the auto side. Did it have any effects on the truck side? Like, is there a before and after period where things are just so different now?
I think it did. I know some of the fleets, reduced the size of their fleets,
Hmm.
sold off some of the units because, people weren't working, even though just about everything we buy or touch is on a truck at some point.
Yeah,
Some of these big companies have told me they have, lowered the amount of trucks and trailers that they have prior to COVID.
just because they realized they had too much capacity, maybe, and it
Yeah,
forced
well,
them to get
you
tighter.
think you think about, say, somebody like a Penske. They got all those box trucks. Most people get those box trucks to move,
Hmm.
so people aren't moving as much.
Yeah.
The economy and the interest rate is high, and the economy's not where it should be, so people aren't moving as much, and they're not renting those trucks. So, they eliminated some of those trucks.
Hmm. So for the auto body side too, and one of the biggest changes is that you used to have adjusters that came out to your shop all the time and negotiated repairs, but then it turned to a, desk jockey guy, and now it's turning into just AI, where it just goes through a machine and it comes out an answer. Like I heard some guys tell me they'll submit a estimate, and then within minutes later they're getting the rejections already. So like that's a big change on that side. Is there anything like that, like besides the shrinking amount of trucks to fix, is there anything that else that like kind of maybe altered the way the truck world is before and after COVID?
I think a lot of them, if they didn't, downsize their fleet, they set the trucks to a side, so if they got one that's wrecked, they just grab another truck,
Okay.
and they'll just wait until, things get better, and then they'll fix it.
Okay, so there's lots sitting out there with to be repaired trucks.
Yeah.
So so that obviously has effects on the commercial truck world, and I know some of the guys are kind of, like a lot of auto body shops right now, they're kind of struggling with cash flow. I know, like that's another area that you specialize in is, you know, getting guys to understand whip adjustment and things like that. What are some of the like I've seen shops where they have like Ron Kuhn's, which I'm sure you probably helped develop it with the dashboard where it has, where it's like tracking, I guess, paint materials and your gross profit and stuff like that. What are some lessons that you have for a shop owner that might be listening here as far as like what kinds of things to track to make sure that because if you come to the realization that there's a shrinking pool of vehicles to fix, then you need to get tighter on in other areas like close ratio is one. If you got less trucks, if you're writing less estimates, you need to win more of those jobs. So what are there other areas that truck shop owners should be aware of, or even auto body shop owners should be watching maybe a little bit tighter now that maybe they weren't in the past?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have gotten away from building rapport with these fleets. That's those guys are controlling the majority of it, so you still gotta build rapport with the people that you're dealing with. You got to educate them. Explain to them, "Why am I replacing the se" have some sessions on the seat belts, for example.
Uh-huh.
This is why we're replacing the seat belts. If this person gets involved in an accident and, severely gets damaged and nobody put a seat belt in it, who you think they're coming after?
Yeah.
Coming after your companies or
Yeah.
ma'am.
So how do you do that then? What's your tactic for reaching out to these your fleet managers to
Yeah,
educate
so
them?
yeah, over lunch, maybe you have a lunch and learn
Hmm.
and go through these things with these folks.
How
But I think
often how often do you recommend they do that?
um and maybe you don't do it every other month, once a month,
Hmm.
and have some lunch and learns to go over and educate those folks on some of the ADOS stuff, which some of them will probably know, but they probably don't know about the calibration side of it for the collision or the seat belts or the airbags. Why am I replacing the clock spring?
Hmm. Yeah. Real quick on the calibrations too. Are the truck shops that are dealing with calibrations, are they doing it them well, you said they're not even doing it, but those that are doing calibrations, are they doing that in-house or is that because I would imagine you can't just send it down to your to the same place that like an offsite calibrations company is for like a that the auto body guys are using. Is
Yeah,
it harder to calibrate?
I think no, it's not that hard to calibrate. Um, they give you through Bendix, and those folks all have, and they're all pretty much the same calibration. You know, you got to do the same for the static calibration, and then take it out on the road to do a dynamic calibration. And once you get through the dynamic side of it, it kind of calibrates itself.
Okay, so self-calibration. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because on the auto buy side, you gotta have different targets for different manufacturers. You gotta have different space. You gotta have, full of fuel. You gotta put weight in the seats. You gotta do all that kind of stuff. You don't have to do that so much with the truck side.
Well, you got to make sure that it's completely aired up. You know, you got to make sure the tires are properly inflated to the. You know, there's a ton of stuff on there that you got to do prior to the static calibration.
Hmm. Okay.
But one thing I just thought about with um, trying to, increase your volume of work is I think shops do a really poor job of back selling.
What does
You know,
that mean? What do you mean by that?
so I don't think they do a good job of tooting their own horn. Some of the systems out there will allow you to send them cycle time reports.
Hmm.
You know, everybody's trying to get that business that you have,
Hmm.
but can they turn the truck as fast as you can? Can they give you a 5-day cycle time?
Yeah, that's a good point. Where on the personal automotive side, cycle time's important. And it's a KPI if you're a DRP shop, but it's probably the most important thing on a commercial truck shop because that vehicle needs to be back out on the road. So that is like a huge selling feature, more
Yeah,
so than OEM correctness and things like that, I would imagine.
yeah. Because if it's not rolling, it's not making money. They're revenue generators,
Yeah. So you recommend pulling these reports and then creating some kind of like a email blast to your existing fleet managers?
right?
That's a good idea. Yeah. Did you ever do that at your shop? Like
Oh
toot
yeah,
your own horn? Yeah.
they got them once a month.
What
Good
other
or bad, they got
what
that.
what other stuff did you do? What like would you just send that or is there any other stuff that you would send to the fleet managers?
We would make sure they got all the because we pre-scanned and post-scanned everything. So we give them all the scan reports, um, any alignment sheets. Because I mean, you think about it, what else are you going to back sell? It's got to be measurable. You got to be able to
Mhm.
measure what you're um, back selling to them.
So you'd send that every month just to kind of keep your name fresh and to realize that you're tracking this stuff so they can feel good about using you all the time.
Right.
Do you ever get customers that just I guess, they get into an accident, they're near your shop and it's just they look and see what's the closest truck repair shop, or does it not work that way?
I think in some cases the independent truckers will, but now that the Penske's and the Riders and some of these companies like that are doing leases, I think they're all going more and more toward the lease because you think about it, in the lease, you get a new truck.
Mhm.
They're going to maintain it for you
Uh-huh.
as part of the lease. But there are some independent truckers still out there.
So it's a Penske truck, it gets into an accident. There's a local truck shop or 2 right where the accident happens, but the nearest Penske dealer is maybe 3 hours away. It's gonna go to that shop and bypass the local shop. Is that what you're saying?
So what they'll do is they will ask you to come out and ride, or they'll take pictures and send it to
Mhm.
the closest Penske Collision Center, and they can say, "We're full, we can't take it. One of your local guys repair it."
So then maybe it would make sense to keep top of mind with those guys then for any
Yeah, yeah,
overflow work. Yeah,
right.
that's a good tip. Well, Dean, I think that covers all my questions. There's one last question, that I always ask is who should I have on the show next? I know you have a couple names in mind that I need to reach out to, but who should I have on the show next?
On the truck side, I think, well, John Spoto would be a good one.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Now he's working with iCar, but John has worked with iCar for a long time. He worked for Premier Truck Group, and he's really, really big on OEM um, repair procedures.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll reach out to John. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think people get a lot out of John.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. That's a great suggestion. All right, Dean. Well, that kind of wraps up all my questions that I have. I want to thank you for joining me on my show here, and always appreciate it. And, all your help and everything that you're doing with us here. So thanks a lot.
All right, thanks a lot. Yeah, I
All right.
enjoyed it.
All right.